Hello, welcome back to RetroBreak and welcome to a long-awaited video on the Legend of Zelda series. I can't believe I haven't done one of these already, and I'm really excited today because, as you can see, I've got a big stack of games here, and in this video I'm going to be walking through my personal history with the series, and it's one of my favourite series of all time, so I'm really excited to share my memories with all of you. But before I do, please check out my channel sponsor Bifrost Bridge Studios. Go and support them over on Patreon and check out their website to be in with a chance of winning one of these amazing retro modded consoles that I've got shown on the screen over here. They're a great company and they're working on some really interesting stuff, so definitely go down in the description below and go and support them over on Patreon, over on Gumroad and over on their own website. So with that said, I'd like you all to come with me now on my personal journey through Hyrule. Let's get started. So, my Zelda journey begins not with Zelda 1 like a lot of people, but actually with Zelda 2. This is one of, if not the first game that I ever played, and this is my original copy of the game from back then. Just seeing this box brings back so many amazing memories. I'm just going to pull it out here so you can all see the amazing gold cartridge that came with this game. There it is. I'm sure you can imagine at the time, like 2 or 3 year old me saw this gold cart and just thought it was the most magical thing in the world. I played it all the time. I actually remember I couldn't even read. That's how young I was when I got this game. So my dad would actually sit down with me and I would ask him to read out what all the villagers were saying in the game. And because of that, this is actually one of my favourite games in the entire series. And I know that is quite a controversial take. I know not a lot of people actually like Adventure of Link, but I have some really fond memories with this game. As you can see, the box is a little bit tatty, but I've kept it all these years and I've finally got a box protector for it as well, and it just brings back so many memories. And because I didn't have Zelda 1 on the NES, I only ever had Zelda 2. I actually prefer this over the original Legend of Zelda. I actually first played that on Animal Crossing on the GameCube. You could actually unlock it to become a NES in your house that you could go and play, and that was the first time that I ever played the original NES Zelda 1. I did get it a few years later. Here it is on the Game Boy Advance as part of the NES Classics range, and there's a nice little story that goes along with me picking this up as well. I actually got this in maybe the mid-2000s. I was with my dad once again and we were at a convention. I think it was Gadget Show Live back then, and the reason we got this was that when my dad bought something else, they actually gave him the wrong amount of change. He actually ended up with an extra £10 note or something, and I remember seeing this and it was 20 quid and I only had a tenner with me, but he'd actually been given a tenner by accident, so we ended up getting this and it only cost me 10 quid. And this was the first time that I actually played all the way through the game, thanks to a guide, because Zelda 1 is very difficult if you don't know what's going on. And then my second Zelda game, it wasn't actually Link to the Past, it wasn't Wand of Gamelon, I'll get back to that one. It was actually Ocarina of Time, and I've got quite a silly story to go along with this one. So I got my N64 in maybe 97 or 98, so I would have been about 6 years old, and I didn't really know much about this game. I hadn't really heard about it at all, and when we got it with the N64, I looked on the back of the box and it was all written in like Old English. I'll put a close-up of that, but it's actually, seeing this is actually bringing back those memories. And I was actually put off the game because I remembered back in the NES days when I was a very little child that I didn't really enjoy reading in games. So when I saw the back of this box and I thought it would be all difficult language like that, I actually told my parents I didn't want it and they actually traded it back in. And believe it or not, it was actually the gold cartridge, not the boring grey one that I've got these days. And that is just something that I kick myself about every single time I think about Ocarina of Time. Unfortunately, a few years later when I got into gaming magazines, I ended up reading about just how much of an incredible game Ocarina of Time actually is, and I really regretted getting rid of it when I got my N64, and that's something I still regret to this day. But the game itself, of course, it's a masterpiece. Absolute 10 out of 10 game, and doing this video is making me want to go back and play it again today. I really do love it. I think they just perfected the Zelda formula with this one, and of course a lot of the games following took a lot of inspiration from this. But the game that Ocarina of Time took a lot of inspiration from was Link to the Past. And I actually got this after I got Ocarina of Time, after I traded it in and then got it back again a few years later. I actually picked this one up at a market stall outside. I just saw it sitting face down and I thought, well, if Ocarina of Time's good, then surely the prequel on the SNES is just as good. And I got it, and I have to say it was fantastic. It was really good. Even at the time, I probably got this around 2000 maybe, and even then I could tell that it was such a high quality game. I remember I played it all the time on my SNES, and probably thanks to this game is one of the reasons why I still enjoy playing retro games as much as I do. It's because of things like this. So even though the SNES at the time was discontinued, it was an old system, playing a game like this made me realise that just because a game is old doesn't mean a game is bad. And thanks to games like Link to the Past, it means that I can go back and enjoy games as they were intended to be enjoyed all those years ago, and still have just as much fun with them today. Now, after that, before I move on to the next mainline Zelda game, I did play a few of the handheld ones. Unfortunately, I don't have them all here, and I never actually owned Oracle of Seasons. I actually only played a friend's copy of that one. So I've got my copy of Oracle of Ages here. I really enjoyed it, but I remember it being quite difficult at the time. I remember getting a bit frustrated with the time travel mechanic. I couldn't quite wrap my head around it back then, but it's one that I would like to go back and play today. And of course, the other one I've got here is my very scratched up copy of Lynx Awakening DX. I did have the original on the original black and white Game Boy back in the day, but I don't actually have that one anymore. I thought I did, but looking through my Game Boy games, I don't seem to have it anymore, so I'll have to try and track down a copy in the near future, because I would like to get all the Zelda games. I am quite close. So these two games definitely have some very special memories for me, especially Link's Awakening DX. I remember I played this one on holiday. I think we were going to France, and this had just come out, and I just got a Game Boy Color at the time as well, and I played this all the time on holiday. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic Zelda game. Probably one of my favourites in the entire series, actually. And now Majora's Mask, and I do have the gold cart, unlike Ocarina of Time, but I have kind of a sad story to go along with this one. So this game came out in 2000, I think, so I was coming to the end of primary school, and the GameCube had just come out, or it was just about to come out, and I remember some of my friends at school, well, I say friends, but I remember them kind of bullying me and saying, oh, you wouldn't be able to play Majora's Mask, it's too difficult, you couldn't even finish Ocarina of Time, which I hadn't actually finished at the time because I did find it quite difficult, but bear in mind I was only 8 or 9 years old, so they actually put me off playing Majora's Mask for the longest time, and I picked it up quite a bit later. I actually picked it up while I was in college, and the first time that I actually played all the way through this game was only about, I want to say a few years ago now, but it was quite a bit longer than that, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, at university, because one of my friends at uni was a big fan of Majora's Mask and he helped me get through it. And it is now one of my favourite Zelda games, and of course we'll get to it a bit later on, but the 3DS remake of Majora's Mask is incredible as well, so it's a really good game, and hopefully it'll come out on the Switch as part of some collection. There is a Nintendo Direct out tomorrow, so maybe what I'm filming now will be completely irrelevant by then, so fingers crossed tomorrow we get some announcements and we get some more Zelda games on the Switch. So the next Zelda game is Wind Waker, and this is the first one that I actually got on launch day. And from this game on, I've got every single other game there on the day it came out, and I've played them all the way through. I've completed every game in the series after this point. And the amazing thing about this copy was the fact that it also came with Ocarina of Time and Master Quest. And believe it or not, Master Quest on this disc right here was the very first time that I'd actually finished Ocarina of Time, and I actually finished it on the harder Master Quest version before I went back and played the original. I think I've actually played Ocarina of Time more on the GameCube than I actually did on the N64, but both of the games, Ocarina of Time, Master Quest and Wind Waker, were phenomenal games. Wind Waker I absolutely loved. I was one of the people at the time that was a little bit disappointed by the graphics, because like a lot of people, I had seen the Space World demo that looked incredible, and then they came out with this really cartoony style the year later, and I was a little bit put off at first, I'm not going to lie, but it did grow on me, and it is one of my favourite games in the series now. Although I think I'm going to say that about every game in the series, because literally I could pick any of these games and they could be my favourite, honestly, but Wind Waker's a fantastic game. And then of course on the GameCube as well, we also got the Collector's Edition, And this was something that I got from Club Nintendo back in the day, when they actually used to do cool prizes like this. So you would have to... Let's see if Twilight Princess has got one in. Yeah, it does. And it's not even scratched off. So for those of you that don't know, there was something called VIP 24/7 here in the UK. And you would get a sheet like this with a scratch card at the back. And you would scratch the cards off. And you would get points or stars or something. So you would get 250 stars every time you filled out one of these surveys on the website. And you could save up and get physical prizes like this actually delivered to you, which was really cool. So one of those prizes that I got was the collector's edition. And of course this came with Majora's Mask, and I actually had this before I actually had Majora's Mask on the N64, but I didn't finish it on this. And this also included Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 and a demo for Wind Waker, which was a little bit obsolete considering I'd already got Wind Waker, but it's a really cool collection, and I think it's got some videos for some of the other games in the series as well. So if you've got a GameCube, this is actually a really cool thing that's definitely worth getting. And before we get to Twilight Princess, there was a few games that came out in between. So there was Zelda Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance, which is definitely one of my favourite 2D Zelda games. Absolutely loved this game when it came out. In fact, I actually played it before it came out at a show called Game Stars Live, which was at the Excel Centre in London. That was actually the first gaming event that I actually went to. My dad took me to it and I absolutely loved it there, and I was so excited to play this along with a lot of other games that I got to play before they were released. And I actually first got to see the DS there as well, which we'll get to a bit later on. But Minish Cap, definitely one of my favourite games. I remember coming home from school every day. I used to go to my nan's after school and I would sit there on the sofa every single day after school with my Game Boy Advance and a bit later on my SP, and I would play Minish Cap all the time. Absolutely loved it. And of course there was also, I don't have the box for this one, but there was also the GBA remake of Link to the Past and Four Swords. Unfortunately at the time I didn't know anyone else who actually wanted to play multiplayer with me, so I never actually played Four Swords with anyone, but I did really enjoy playing through Link to the Past again. So those were some of the handheld ones that came out before this absolute masterpiece of a Zelda game. This is Twilight Princess, and once again, like Minish Cap, I actually got to play this one early at another event called Nintendo All-Stars. I can't remember where this one was exactly, but it was in a field somewhere, and they actually had a castle like laid out, and they had demos of Twilight Princess there, and I was just so excited. This game, more than any game before it, I was just hyped up beyond belief. Right from the first moment that trailer from E3 2004 was first shown. In fact, I'm going to stop the video now and let you guys experience the magic of that E3 trailer from 2004. Just enjoy this, it's absolute magic, it really is. So I'm sure you can see why I was so excited. I think I was almost in tears after I saw that. So it did take a long time for the game to come out, and in fact, I actually first got it on the Wii, not the GameCube, and obviously the Wii is the reason that the GameCube version got delayed, but I honestly fell in love with it, and it could not have been a better launch title. It wasn't until a few years after that I'd go back and play the GameCube original, and I enjoy both versions, honestly. I enjoy the fact that it's completely flipped as well, so it kind of feels like playing a new game, and it's definitely one of, if not my favourite game in the whole series. And of course it also got a re-release on the Wii U, which I'll come to in just a moment. So in between that and the next console Zelda game, there was actually two more handheld games. There was Spirit Tracks and there was Phantom Hourglass, or should I say Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, considering this one came first. Now, if I'm completely honest, I don't really like these games that much, The main reason I don't like them is the fact that it uses one recurring dungeon, which I kind of felt was a little bit out of character for the Zelda series. I like the fact that you're always pushing forward. So with these two games, the fact that you have to keep going back and then forwards and then back again to the same place, it didn't really feel like a grand adventure like some of the ones that came before it. But I liked the graphics. I thought they were really cool for the DS. I love the cel-shaded look. I quite enjoyed the controls, using the touchscreen to move Link around and draw it on the map. I thought was a really cool idea, but the dungeons themselves were a little bit basic in my opinion, and they're not my favourite games in the series, although they are pretty interesting. And then we have this weird spin-off for the Wii, which came with the Wii Zapper. I actually really had a good time with this. This is Link's Crossbow Training. And if you don't know what it is, it's kind of like an arcade-style light gun game, where you basically play as Link with the crossbow, as the title suggests, and you're just going through different environments from Twilight Princess, and it's basically just a target shootout and a high score challenge. I'm showing my age now, but I actually played this with a friend at school, and we would use our webcams and play it through MSN Messenger, and we'd actually have the webcam facing the TV, and we'd both be playing through this at the same time. That's a great memory. So that's just a really nice, funny memory that I have from this game. And then there was actually quite a long wait until the next mainline Zelda game, and this one came out exactly 10 years ago to coincide with the 25th anniversary. But before I get to that, I just want to rewind a little bit and say that for the 25th anniversary, I actually went to the Zelda 25th anniversary concert in London, and it was a mind-blowing experience. Before that point, I'd actually been avoiding all of the trailers leading up to Skyward Sword because I didn't want the experience ruined. And the first time that I actually saw this game playing in person was at the Zelda Symphony at the end, when they had the trailer and they played one of the songs from Skyward Sword, and I was just, my mind was blown. It looked way better than I even imagined it would. And when the game finally came out that year, I was in love with the game. I honestly was. Nowadays I can see its flaws, but back then I was just blindsided by how excited I'd been. It came out 6 years after the last mainline Zelda game, and for me, honestly, the wait was worth it. I loved the fact that they filmed the overworld with puzzles. It brought me right back to Lynx Awakening DX. There was just puzzles to solve at every turn, and I really love that in a Zelda game. And I just loved the atmosphere of it. I loved flying around in the sky. Of course, like I said, these days I can see some of its faults. I can see that Fi is quite an annoying companion compared to Midna or Navi, but in my opinion, it's definitely one of the best Zelda games. It has some of the best dungeons, which are a big part of the Zelda series, and it has a great atmosphere and a great story, and that is what makes a great Zelda game in my opinion. And I really, really hope it gets a remake on the Switch so more people can enjoy this game, because I know that the motion controls weren't for everyone, but for me, I really enjoyed everything about it. I'd honestly say it's right up there with Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess as quite possibly my favourite game in the entire series, and like I said before, I love every game in the series, so that is really saying a lot. And then Nintendo kind of took a back seat on the series for a while, at least in terms of new games, and there was quite a few re-releases that came out around this time. So there was Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, Wind Waker HD, and Twilight Princess HD. And I'm only going to briefly touch on these because I've already talked about the individual games, but honestly these are the definitive ways of playing the games that I mentioned earlier. So if you've got a Wii U or if you've got a 3DS, highly recommend getting any of these remakes, and I really do hope they come out on the Switch, because the 3DS and the Wii U didn't really do as well as some of the earlier systems, so maybe some people missed out on these re-releases, which were actually incredible, especially Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on the Wii U. I love what they did with these, and to be honest, it'll be kind of a step back going to the Switch, because one of the things I loved so much about these two was the fact that it used dual screens. Well, actually, come to think of it, the thing that I loved about all four of these games is the fact that it used both screens. So you'd always have the items available, you'd always have the maps, so it'd be kind of difficult to get lost in the dungeons. And I kind of wish that Nintendo went back to these more experimental systems like the Wii U and the 3DS, because I love that style of gameplay, and I love these games as well. Around that time as well though, of course, there were a few original games. There was Link Between Worlds for the 3DS, which was a fantastic sequel to the amazing SNES original. This game is just so full of ideas, and they tried to mix up the Zelda formula a bit by doing the dungeons in whatever order you want, and it was quite an interesting concept, although I feel like having the dungeons out of order kind of makes the weapons that you find and the progression not quite as rewarding as some of the earlier games, which are more linear and they can kind of build around that idea. This one kind of felt a bit more freeform, which I know some people like, but I prefer the linear style of Zelda game, which is something I'll come back to later on as well. And I don't really want to talk about this one. If you want to hear my thoughts on Triforce Heroes, go and watch the video I did about 3DS games a few weeks ago. I'll put a link in the description and put it in the little eye that pops up over there or over there, so go and watch that. I haven't mentioned this one on purpose, only because I haven't actually played it yet, because I'm waiting to get a controller for the CDI. This one is Wand of Gamelon, and of course it's not actually a proper official Zelda game. This is one that Philips made with Nintendo's blessing, but it's an interesting thing to have. And of course, I'm sure you all know the shopkeeper on the back there, so there he is. And now, there was one more game that came out for the Wii U, and another one that I was really excited to play when this first got announced. This is Hyrule Warriors, and I absolutely love this game. I think it's fantastic. And of course, I loved it on the Switch as well. There's the Switch one. So yeah, I really loved these two games when they came out originally. And I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit now. I've been really enjoying Age of Calamity as well. I really do like this style of game, and it's really cool that Nintendo let them do a Zelda version. I would love for more Nintendo franchises to do these kind of games in the future. I really liked what they did with the Fire Emblem one as well. And two games left now, of course. Another one that was very much hyped up for me. This was Breath of the Wild. But if you've been paying attention to what I think about some of the other games, I don't really like the fact this is an open world game. I like my Zelda games to be a bit more structured, but at the time I was kind of put off by the whole open world aspect of it. So maybe if I went back and played it again now, I might enjoy it more. But for me personally, being a huge fan of the Zelda games, this one kind of felt like a step in the wrong direction. For me personally anyway. I know a lot of people really like it, but I'm going to try and give it another chance because I really wanted to like it. And I kind of feel bad saying that I don't like it, because I know a lot of people would put this right at the top. But honestly, looking at all the games now, I'd probably put this near the bottom, at least from what I experienced when I first played it. I did complete it, and I got most of the shrines, but the fact that there's no proper dungeons, the fact that there's no proper story, it's all just told in flashbacks, it's kind of... it doesn't really feel like a Zelda game to me. And maybe that's because I didn't grow up playing Zelda 1. If you played Zelda 1, you probably think this is a return to form, but for me, my return to form would be something more along the lines of Ocarina of Time or Link to the Past, which are two of my favourite games in the series. But enough about Breath of the Wild. I will play it again in the future, I promise. And I'm going to try and change my opinion before Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, because I am looking forward to it. And the latest Zelda game that's been released at the time of recording this was the remake of Lynx Awakening for the Switch, which I think was a great game. The only thing that I didn't like about this was the fact that the frame rate would drop really rapidly in random areas. But apart from that, the game was an amazing remake of the Game Boy Color game. Absolutely love this game. Like I said about Skyward Sword, I love the fact that this game is just full of puzzles at every turn. And that is one of the things that makes this entire series so special to me, and that's all of the puzzles, all of the areas to explore, and it's by far one of my favourite game series. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was quite long, but I just wanted to talk about one of my favourite series of all time and show it some love for the 35th anniversary. And that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know your personal journey through the Zelda series. That would be really interesting. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you're new here. I would really appreciate that. I do a new video every Friday, so there's loads to look forward to. And I'm well on my way to 10,000 subscribers, so thank you all so much for that. As well, check out my Patreon for behind the scenes looks at every video every week. I really appreciate all of my amazing Patreons. That's it for now. I'll see you all next week for the next episode. Goodbye! Oh, damn it, I missed the best one.